Joanna and I laughed as we raced the last few meters toward the shady patch where Jesus was stretched out by a well, colliding into each other at the last moment and collapsing in giggles at his side. My tiny traveling sack went skidding across the ground until a protruding root from a scrubby olive tree stopped it. Jesus sat up and offered a hand to each of us, pulling us up. My thin fingers always felt safe and closed in his calloused palms. "And what's so funny?" he asked. "Not funny," Joanna said. "Amazing." "It was just like we saw you do," I told him. "The first house we visited, they received our shalom, and the family welcomed us in and said we could stay as long as we wanted." "The food was so good," Joanna licked her lips at the memory. "Their auntie who lived next door was sick with a fever and a cough," I said. "They let us go visit her, and we laid our hands on her just like you did." Joanna leaned in. "We asked God to heal her, the same prayer you pray. Then we told her to get up. And she did," I said. "It was incredible. The whole family got together for a party, and they asked us to tell them more of your teachings." Joanna laughed. "Mary tried to tell them the story about the seeds in the different soils, but she mixed it up with the one about the vine grower's 2 sons, and suddenly there were 2 farmers planting seeds." "They still got the point," I protested. Jesus chuckled. He stood, taking Joanna's empty water skin to the well, and drew up the bucket to refill it. He handed it back to her, and she drank, then passed it to me. I heard thundering feet and looked back down the road Joanna and I had traveled to see John several meters ahead of James. He slid to a stop right in front of us, sending dust up into our faces. His smile collapsed when he recognized us. "Hey, how did you beat me here?" James caught up to him and clapped him on the back. "You're not as fast as you think you are, bro." I covered my mouth to hide my snicker so I wouldn't further shame John. "Anyway," John said, sitting on the edge of the well and scowling at his brother, "we had a lot of success. A lame man started walking." He and James told us more about the village where they had stayed. I saw a bigger group of apprentices coming now, 15 at least. Thaddeus reached us first, dropped his bag next to mine, and flopped down into the dirt. "The first house we visited, we tried to tell them God's kingdom is coming, but they weren't interested." "We remembered what you told us about people rejecting us," Bartholomew said. "It felt awful. It helped me understand you better, though." He gave Jesus a half smile. "I'm sorry they do that to you, too, not listen to your message." Jesus smiled back and squeezed his hand. Andrew and Salome scooted closer to share their report. 2 people were freed from evil spirits. As the rest of the 70 returned, our circle spilling out of the range of the shade, we heard story after story of their triumphs. The excited energy spread through our group, everyone squeezing closer to hear, kissing each other, even a few people with happy tears in their eyes. Joanna and I still had the vantage point at Jesus' side, and after a while, I stopped watching the others as they spoke and started watching his reactions to their experiences. His grin was wider than I had seen it in weeks. Ever since we had started this trek toward Jerusalem, he had grown quieter, more somber, hanging on the edge of the group, withdrawing more often, not even laughing at Peter's stupid jokes most of the time. I heard snippets of his conversations, catching words like suffering and prophet and guilty and killed. But today he wasn't serious at all. Joy radiated around him like a glowing cloud. More stories poured out. Blind seeing, lepers cleansed, and everywhere people wanting to learn more about the kingdom. Suddenly Jesus threw back his head and laughed. It rumbled up from his chest and burst out through his beard. He tossed his arms in the air and looked up at the sky. "Father, look at what you've done. Thank you. These mysteries you hold, you've hidden them from the stuffy religious folks and instead shown the secrets to these guileless babies. And it makes you happy to do it like this. You've given me everything, Father, and I couldn't be happier. I know you and you know me." He reached out for Salome and Joanna standing nearby. "Look what I gave you. You were safe from any danger as you went out and made a stand against darkness, and I am so delighted that thrills you. But the real prize isn't in your winning against evil. It's in God winning in your life." He stepped toward John and James. "You are so lucky to have seen and done all these things. The kings and prophets in our history and in our scriptures wanted to live to see this day, and here you are living their dream." My skin tingled with the meaning of his words. We were living through a pivot point of history, participating in something so much bigger than ourselves. I felt like my chest would burst with the joy of it all.